Good morning, my friends. How are you? I am so excited to be here with you today. Hi there. My name is Natasha. I am the creator and the founder of the Glow Up Method. Oh my gosh. I am just so grateful that we had electricity all night, which meant we had air conditioning. I did at one point decide to open my window. It's always the struggle, like to deal with the stillness of hot or the hot of hot. And so I elected to open my window for the evening, like once I went into bed, and it was fine. It was good, but that also had downfalls, right? So like it was a little bit warmer than what it was, but it was moving, which I appreciate. Like it wasn't moving much, but just some movement of air, just felt not stagnant, and I didn't feel stifled by it. And then at one point, I think I woke up, it was like 2 a.m, and I literally was wide awake. I was like, okay, I'm ready to start the day. Like I felt refreshed. I was like, are you kidding me? I thought it was 5. I thought it was gonna be 5, and I was like, ooh, it's 2, but it was quite warm. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do the biggest, faux pas. I checked around the house. It was kind of warm in my app. So I kicked that air conditioning on and really got some flow. Even though my room gets very limited flow, it just still got some more movement in here. And so for me, movement is good. Like movement is, it's not stagnation. I appreciate it. I am learning, and this is my journey, and I hope it's yours too, where we're moving, we're evolving, we're not staying where we were, trapped by our fears, our insecurities, what other people's judgments are, what our own judgments of ourselves are. We're on this evolution, ever moving planet, and we too are like a little microcosm of that. We are our own little planet and being, moving and changing every single day. Like we are not the same as we were yesterday. And so I've had to do a lot of reflections on, my most recent interaction with Chris. It was, I think, really indicative of who we were, and it was really indicative of who I want to be, and it was really indicative of my always believing the best in people. My interpretation of anything wants to see it in the best of light. It wants to look for the best case scenario. Now I may have to analyze what the worst case scenario is in order to work on the best case scenario, to know, oh, this is the worst thing that can happen. Like that's part of my research process. And I could see where Chris is coming from. He's a very scared and insecure and hurt person, and he is in stagnation there. Like he is staying there. He is owning that. He believes he deserves that, somewhere inside. And it's interesting to watch because I was that person too for so long. Like I felt unworthy of feeling happiness. I felt unworthy of exploring and discovering what things made Natasha happy, not Natasha, the mother of blah, 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 or the wife of blah, 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 or the daughter of blah, 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 or the friend of blah, blah, blah. Like really just me. If I take everybody else out of the picture, what things bring me joy? I can just immediately say to you, my dancing. And for some reason I went to my dancing yesterday, and it's not the class that's the most hypiest. And, I sometimes am a chameleon. Like oftentimes I've lived my life being a chameleon because it's easier to be accepted if you're alike, right? So, I don't a lot of times formulate my own opinions, or this is what I used to, because it was easier to be a chameleon when you don't have that resistance, right? Like if I'm just doing what you want to do and I don't have an opinion, like I'm just floating, like there's no resistance. But if I'm doing something you want to do, or I'm voting for a particular party because you want me to, or I'm supporting this candidate because you want me to, or I'm eating this dinner because you want me to, like there in here is like a resilience, because there's this struggle, right? Because it's like, I don't really want to be doing this. Like, this doesn't align with who I am. This isn't, it's fighting against your integrity, your foundation, your everything. But when you relinquish that control, right? So like, this is what I've done is I've forbidden. My dad said, be in this profession, you know, like we have this, you know, like when I allowed myself to just surrender to other people's needs, wants, dreams for me, whatever, it made that process so much easier, right? Because there wasn't all this resistance. I was just like, whatever. And there was, you know, a little something inside saying, this isn't right. So I wasn't like, I was a happy person, you know, I wasn't necessarily, I mean, not happy either. I mean, there were moments I was, you know, battling depression, but with the life I lived, that's not crazy to think of, right? There was times when I was very stressed. There was times that I was very anxious and worried and living in all those places. And yeah, that's like, okay, yeah, that's to be expected with, you know, the circumstances that came up in my personal life, right? But the moment I started discovering and finding and exploring what stuff made me happy, it really made it more challenging to just surrender to somebody else's rims. Like that little kind of that, you know, like I don't know if I'd like to do that, like literally became a screaming voice. And it's like, no, we cannot, no, you know. And I get it. In some, I'm not saying life is all about how you want it and you know, like if you're in relationships, there's compromise. You know, if you live in a certain country, there's things you're gonna do you don't want to do. It doesn't mean you're doing everything you want, you know, like that's not it either. It's compromising with the environment you're in while you're not compromising who you are and what your integrity is. And that can only be discovered by you. And yes, there are influences externally. And so you get to choose what influences you have externally. There are negative, fearful ones, right? And those are the people we seem to attract, right? Because when you're living and you're vibing in that zone, that is who you are gravitated to. That is where you feel safe because they understand. You're a chameleon. You become like them. Like, oh yes, you know, oh, it's just too hot. And, you know, you're complaining all the time instead of like looking for solutions, you know, like in my past life, that wasn't so long ago, I would lay in bed in the heat. I'd contemplate what to do for an hour. I'd be hot. Why is it so hot? Why doesn't this room? And I'd make all these complaints and nothing would happen. This time, the difference is I'm like, hey, let's try it out. If it gets too hot, we shut the window. Like if the air and the thing doesn't work, like it's about curiosity and seeing what works today. And maybe you can use some of the knowledge from yesterday or somebody else to help formulate, like guide you on that decision-making process. But just being able to get up and do something, some movement. Movement is key. Stagnation keeps you where you are and you are like a hostage in that environment. And so I've really been thinking about, again, like I said, that conversation. And there were things that I did well, you know, like walking away and probably walking away. That was, you know, when I was like, you know, it's a hard process, right? You're right-handed, you're in there, you know, you're feeling somebody raise their voice and attacked, and, you know, you're standing up for your beliefs, and, you know, and instead of somebody hearing you, they just want to scream over you and make sure that the other people in the house, which are my kids, who I'm super defensive of, or protective of, I should say, both, I'm not defensive of, I'm protective of, are in the, you know, in the house, which you could be whispering and they could be in an earshot, but when you're screaming, they for sure hear. And even if they don't hear what the words are, just the tone of it is just so, you know, as a kid, it takes me back because I go back to like hearing my parents yell in that environment. So I want to protect them just like I protected Danny, and I, in a way, protected myself by putting on the record players and, you know, covering ears and doing like burying under blankets and all those things, like was to protect myself. And now I protect my kids and things like that. So when he's yelling at me and then yelling things that aren't even true, yelling falsities to further victimize himself and to villainize me, I guess, I mean, this is how I take it. I don't know what his intentions are. If his intentions are, oh my gosh, she's saying all these things and now I want to get back together with you, no, like you are just reconfirming in my mind that I made the best decision for me, and I'm so relieved to not be a part of this game anymore. Like I just look at you with such different eyes and see like this was so unhealthy and toxic for so long, and I can't sit here and even be just upset that I didn't notice it sooner. I'm just grateful I see it now. And you know, if his intention is to turn my kids against me, well, that's again gonna have to be up to him, up to the relationship with me and their decisions. Like if they want to believe one person over another because they're shouting something, that's up to them. If they want to stay out of it, that's up to them. If they want to believe in their mom who's always been by them and has never lied to them and kept them, you know, on, it's up to them. I have no control of that. What I can control is I know my truth. And deep down somewhere in there, he knows his truth, which is why he sits here and, you know, makes up lies, and then will have to sometimes come back and apologize when prompted. You know, sometimes he does on occasion, but, you know, he is in this position where he is so in believing this fictitious story that he admittedly makes up. And I can't contend with not reality. So I say all this to say, initially my response is to react, right? It's to defend myself. Like, you know, I never said that. Like I have letters and texts from you, you know, saying you are the one who were saying all these things. Like, this is not true what you're saying. You're saying things and then you're blaming me for them that I did not say or do. And, you know, it's hard to not defend yourself in that situation. But as soon as I realized it, which wasn't immediate, and yeah, I could be like, oh my gosh, you should have, it doesn't matter. Eventually I did realize it and I walked away. And that was the healthiest thing to do. And once I did, like that inner me in me was like, yay, like with the cheering things and, you know, little pom-poms and like, good job. You know, you did what you were supposed to do. And that's kind of what I need, is that like reassurance, because I want to stand there. Like that old version of me wants to defend herself, and this is my honor. And there's no reason. He's going to believe what he's going to believe. My kids will believe what they believe, and I will believe and know what I know about me to be true. And there is no defending it. You either know and accept it, or you don't, and you know, we part ways, whatever it is. So I'm very glad that I could have the strength to do that. And even though I was no longer in the room, he continued yelling at me, and I began to giggle because I was just like, I'm so glad I'm not there and in this conversation right now. In a different world, in a different time in my past, I would have been right there in it, screaming back, doing all kinds of things, saying things. Like, I wasn't there, and I had to giggle. And then he, you know, mocked my giggling because, you know, he took it as whatever story he wanted to believe. But I was just like, this is peace. Like, I don't have to be in the storm. That is no longer reacting to his things. And I even noticed my body when it was near him and it was being screamed at. It tensed up. It felt warm. My stomach hurt. Like, you know, I felt tense in my shoulders, and like, you know, I was in a very protective mode of myself. But with each step I took up the stairs, my shoulders dropped, the stress came down, the tension released. And in that, I realized by not reacting, I'm flexing my resilience muscle, right? Like, I don't have to respond in the way I used to, and that I can properly process this. And instead of my body absorbing all this tension and having no place to go, I can meditate, I can walk, I can, you know, think and just release it instead of retaining it all and making myself sick and stressed and worried. And my previous life, my previous self would have sat up all night long, been upset, sent a text, sent an email. Now for me, journaling is huge. And so writing a letter to him that I never sent really just helped me and gave me this opportunity to, you know, get it out without ignoring what was going on and what my desires would be. Like, this was a safe place for me to do. And, you know, only would have been like, I wrote, I'm going to blast it off. And then he would have blasted something back, and I would have blasted something back, and it would have been totally reactionary. But this, I took my power back. I held that power and I took care of myself. I released what I needed to release. I got it out and I left it to where I could email it, and I've chose not to. And I feel really happy about that decision because, here we are. Ironically, today would be my 25th wedding anniversary. And I can tell you, I've never imagined this was how I would be spending my 25th anniversary, although it wasn't like not in the realm of how I would spend it. Like, it wasn't this fairy tale that has, fallen apart. It wasn't a Bridgerton story and, all those, romantic movies and all the things that I fantasized in my head about how, husbands and wives are, and, what you see on film and on TV and in school and in life in general. That was not our story. And so it's not like it wasn't in the realm of possibility. But I can tell you this for sure. In 25 years, I got very comfortable, and I'll say 25, even though I've been working for a year or two, but I'm getting to the point now where the work is really exploding. It's like at that compound interest place where it's like just doubling in a very rapid manner, because all these lessons I've learned, like when you get into advanced maths and stuff, like it just goes quick now. Like in the beginning, we're like 1 + 1, and then we're doing times tables and divisions and perhaps square roots and, basic algebra. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we're on a roll here. But I say all that to say, in this reflection of an anniversary, so, I've always said, like, anniversaries are one of those things that are really big to me. They always are momentous, whether it's a good anniversary, a bad anniversary, whatever it may be. They always tend to, have an impact on me. And the further I get from something, the more clarity and peace I become with whatever the situation. I may not know dates always exactly, but I know time frames and I know things. And then eventually some anniversaries you forget, right? Like, they're very fresh in the beginning and then things like that. So whatever it may be, maybe, an anniversary of an injury, an anniversary of a passing of somebody, maybe an anniversary of, the first time you did something great that you loved. But I really like celebrating or at least recognizing what had happened. And it's not to sit in it and be like, oh my gosh, this is the day they passed, and dwelling on it. It's just, again, these reminders to really live. Like if I'm celebrating my grandma because that was the day her passed, I'm not thinking about, all the things that went down and the end of her life. I'm thinking about how beautiful her life is and how she had 4 amazing kids and she had a ton of grandchildren and now has great-grandchildren, and at some point she's gonna have great-great-grandchildren. And, they will hear the stories from me of this remarkable woman who is extremely resilient, who was born in one country, raised in another, had to move to another because of war, and then moved to another country and knew 3 languages at least. And just, she was a remarkable woman. And she could always make me laugh. Like, no matter what she had been through, it never broke her spirit. It never broke who she was. It only enhanced her as a human. And so really working on realizing that, I know our bodies get feelings, right? When we feel attacked, we want to tense up, we want to protect ourselves, just like a turtle, we put on the hard shell and whatever it is, and we kind of even like move in, to protect our internal organs and things like that. But sometimes we don't have, oftentimes, the proper tools to learn how to release that tension, how to surrender it out of our body, and we keep holding it and wonder why our shoulders and our necks and our guts and all these things hurt, because we have all these repressed emotions in there that aren't being addressed. And resolved. And so really utilizing the mindfulness practice these last few months has been really crucial in that resilience. And so another part of it is I really had to celebrate. Like I had to say, good job, Natasha. I had to do that, like the dog, right? With the ringing the bell. I had to really say, I did well. There was still room for improvement. Here's some areas if you're interested to improve upon. But good for you. You ended the conversation, and then you didn't just pretend it didn't happen. You didn't dwell on it about how dare he do this, how dare he do this, and here you need to apologize to the kids, and you need to do this thing. And it wasn't about him. It was always about him for 24 plus years. It was about him and reacting to whatever his, not to be rude, immature responses are. I looked at him as he was my elder. I was taught always to respect my elders, and he's 4 years older than me. And so I just felt like, I knew nothing in some ways. In some ways, I very much was confident what I knew, but in a human way, in a spiritual way, I felt like he was on the same journey as me, just 4 years ahead of me. And I felt like, he knew all the answers. And looking back now, like I was like, he knew nothing, right? Like he's an immature person who, not that he didn't know anything, he knows a lot of things, but with all these things that I gave him all this power and control of, he was not capable of having that kind of thing, like he's never driven a boat. That's like me giving him a cruise ship and saying, here, guide the ship to the ports and make sure everybody gets there safely. It's just not him. And releasing that kind of expectation that, Chris was the more mature one, he should know, and all these things, he didn't, and he doesn't. And so letting that go and seeing not about what he has done or how he has affected me. It is, how I've chosen to respond. That is on me to say, how am I going to let this not manipulate me, but like consume me. And so before, I would have stayed up all night. I would have been upset. I would have been crying and all these things. And I slept like a baby. Like, I was just like, okay, I got it out. I did what I needed to do. And I'm still, it still pops up, and I'm still kind of confused or, seeing like where I can have the learning lessons in it. But I'm also in a place of peace with it. And so here we are on this 25th wedding anniversary. And what I can say is this, what I can control is me. And that's all I know for certain, right? Like my decisions, my choices. Yes, there are extenuating factors around me that, influence and I cannot control. But what I can control, I can control. And so today for me, this day is about some reflection. It's about, like, tomorrow's 4th of July, it's about Independence Day for me. I have regained my independence. I don't know if I ever had it at any point in my life, but now, and I thought I did, I was like, I'm a strong, independent woman. But I know now what I didn't know then is this independence comes from within. This confidence comes from within. And it's the freedom to say, yes, I do not have any desires to reconcile and be a part of this type of relationship going forward. But I would love to cultivate a new and fresh relationship with you. That does not mean that he wants to have a friendship with me. That does not mean that we will have this relationship that I envision in my mind. But it does mean that I have the freedom to say, this is what I would like. And as he has the freedom to say, this is what I would like, and this is what I'm not able to do, or I am able to do. And so I hope now, after 25 years, after 4 kids, after umpteen medical things, and after umpteen arguments, but after umpteen dinners and laughters too, I really hope for us to come to this place where we can have this mutual peace and respect for one another and become the best co-parents that our children could ever wish for. And so, like my son yesterday had asked, can I have my friend sleep over? And then he's like, oh, wait, it's your anniversary. And then he began to laugh, and he was like, oh yeah, big plans for you guys or whatever. I'm like, no, it's fine. You can, so they are becoming more comfortable with what they know. And again, whenever we get all four in the same room at the same time and it isn't like a celebration, I would love to really plan to have that thing, but there's always people around and things like that. And this is something that needs to be sat down and have between us all and as mature people. And I can't control Chris, but I know that I'm getting ready to, explain and plan out what the future looks like for us. What are our plans? Which also means I probably should have a conversation with Chris and say, what are the plans? Not like waiting, but like, what would you like to see? And let's create a timeline and an exit strategy, so to say, so that we are all in knowing and in peace. For me, living in the limbo for the last few years, it was to give hope. It was to have, this part of me that didn't want to let go, that was loyal to a fault, that was, really wanting to maintain the family dynamic on an external thing. But when I started thinking about it, I didn't want to maintain this family dynamic where, somebody was mistreating me and stepping over my boundaries all the time, and I was allowing it to happen. Like, I was no longer accepting, like, I was not ever okay with it, but like, the amount of conversations I've had with my sons in particular, and even my daughter, to say, don't accept this type of treatment. I know I'm doing it, and I know I'm your mom. And then also to unlearn the things that my sons saw and say, this isn't how you treat women. This isn't how you treat your significant other. This is not okay. And, I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm just saying he probably doesn't know better. He knows what he knows, and he's comfortable using his right hand, and he really isn't in a position to learn how to use his left hand yet. And it doesn't mean he can't get there. It took me 47 years, 45 years, whatever it was. I'm 47 now, to get to the place where I learned what I've learned. And it couldn't happen because I was under threat or duress. Some people be like, you need to stop drinking, you need to stop doing this, or I'm this. Like, there's no blackmail, there's anything. It came from me. It came from my own desires, just as my physical well-being, my mental health, like everything needed a change. It wasn't just one aspect. If you believe that just changing your physical is going to change everything, you're going to be for a rude awakening. Like, it is a multifaceted approach. We are multifaceted. We have our, intellectual, we have our bodies, we have our, emotions, we have our mental, we have like our dreams that we're all working towards and stuff. And so it is a multifaceted approach. I wanted to give you a quick update on, speaking of movement, I can't get this young man out of my mind. And, I'm a person who's very empathetic, so I can put myself in your shoes very easily, especially if it's in a situation I know. So I can picture a hospital room in that particular hospital and know exactly what it looks like. I can do everything. And so to imagine myself, I was talking about movement, being in this place, in this body, in this temple that used to be able to, like, I find myself just doing this, and I'm like, wow, like, I am a miracle. This is amazing. Like, I am so grateful I could do this, because there are people on this earth that would love to do this, right? Right now, I know somebody, so as I'm struggling in my second dance class, not struggling, but like, I'm like, oh, I'm sore. I'm thinking about him and like, man, he would love to sit here and be sore and do this. Like, even if this isn't something he'd love to do, he's not a dancer, like, just to get up and say, oh yeah, I'll do that even. Like, so I really am thinking about him a lot. I'm really praying for the healing of his lungs, that his breathing improves, that his fever goes away. Like, he is in my thoughts all the time. His family and their courage to communicate with all of us and share this unfortunate injury and accident is very inspirational. They are really, really leaning on, their spirituality to help guide them and get them into a space where they are able to be resilient, and they are. And, I know the little details that they share or somebody else shares. And I respect their what they want to share and what they don't, or what they're able to. When you're in those situations, like, time is moving like this, but yet so slow. There's people coming in, and it's like all of a sudden it's like a tidal wave, and you take on a lot of information, a lot of people in the room, and then it goes away, and you're kind of left there, and your brain is still kind of going, like, it's not fully accepted and understanding of what's all happening. So I say all that to say, I'm going to continue to think and pray for our dear friend and their family. And if you could just do me one favor today, please go out there, give somebody a big smile, give them a compliment, and just watch how they glow up. So thank you so much today.